The Galactic Embassy on Nereth Prime stood as a symbol of fragile unity. Amid the luminous architecture of alien designs and Earth's pragmatic efficiency, humans held their first diplomatic summit on neutral ground. Marcus Thane, Earth's senior ambassador, was the man of the hour. His sharp wit and unyielding optimism had earned humanity a place at this table, though it hadn't come without resentment from other species. He moved gracefully through the room, exchanging pleasantries with dignitaries and calming tensions with his charm. By his side was Emilia Thane, his quiet and composed wife, who preferred to remain in the background. She watched him with a faint smile, her demeanor that of a supportive partner, offering reassurance in the high-stakes dance of diplomacy. The air shifted as the Kravoth delegation entered. Towering reptilian creatures with scaled hides and jagged, armor-like exoskeletons, they were known for their brutal efficiency in war and their disdain for humans. Whispers filled the hall as their leader, High Commander Vorzak, approached Marcus. "We wonder," Vorzak sneered, his voice a guttural growl, "how long humanity will continue pretending it belongs here." Marcus met the challenge head-on, his reply measured but firm. "Humanity doesn't pretend, Commander. We earn our place, just as you did." The tension in the room was palpable, but Emilia's eyes remained on Marcus. She noticed the subtle flicker of Vorzak's clawed hand, a signal to one of his subordinates. The smallest details never escaped her, even in a room as chaotic as this. Moments later, chaos erupted. A plasma bolt zipped across the hall, striking Marcus square in the chest. He staggered, eyes wide with shock, and collapsed before anyone could react. The room erupted into screams and confusion. Security forces sprang into action, but the attackers, cloaked operatives of the Kravoth, melted into the crowd. Vorzak watched impassively, his satisfaction barely concealed as he and his delegation retreated under the guise of concern. Emilia knelt by her husband's lifeless body, her trembling hands brushing over his face. The tears that streamed down her cheeks were genuine, but the storm building behind her eyes was something far darker. The Kravoth misjudged her. To them, she was merely the grieving widow of a human diplomat, inconsequential in the grand scheme of their games. They didn't know her name was whispered in the shadows of Earth's military as a legend. They didn't know she had walked away from a life that had left entire fleets crippled and enemy leaders terrified to sleep. And they didn't know they had just awakened the predator she had buried long ago. She rose slowly, her grief transforming into cold resolve. Around her, diplomats panicked, and security scrambled to regain control. She let them. Emilia Thane had work to do, and she couldn't afford to be slowed down by formalities. For now, she allowed them their assumptions. They thought her powerless, but they had no idea what they had unleashed. Emilia stood in the dimly lit room, staring at the encrypted message she had just received. Her hands, steady despite the tremor in her chest, moved swiftly over the keyboard, decrypting the coordinates and intelligence embedded in the transmission. The message was clear. This wasn't just an assassination, it was a declaration of war. The Kravoth had chosen to strike at the heart of humanity's diplomatic efforts, and they had done so with calculated precision. But they had made one fatal mistake. She removed the datapad from the console and placed it into a hidden compartment beneath the floor. There was no room for hesitation anymore. The life she had tried to bury, the life that had once made her feared throughout the galaxy, was no longer something she could ignore. She knew the risks. She knew the price of failure. But Marcus's death had opened the floodgates of something deeper. She wasn't just avenging him, she was setting the stage for humanity's reckoning. Emilia moved toward the far wall where her old gear was stashed. Her hand hovered over the chest of weapons and tools, the unmistakable hum of advanced Earth technology ready for use. The silent, sleek pistols, the blades coated in a toxin designed to incapacitate within seconds, and the cloaking tech that could make her vanish from sight, all these items were part of her legacy. Once, she had used them to secure humanity's interests in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Now, they would serve another purpose. She hesitated for only a moment before strapping on the old utility belt. The weight of the gear brought back memories of countless covert operations, the countless lives taken, and the countless faces she had seen, often in the blink of an eye, never knowing their names or their stories. She had lived through it all, and yet, each mission had been a small piece of herself chipped away. Until Marcus had pulled her away from that life. But now she was alone, her love stolen from her, and the only thing that mattered was justice. Not the diplomatic kind, not the kind where speeches and negotiations resolved conflict.
No.
This was the kind of justice that would leave the Kravoth trembling, remembering that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. Emilia's first move was simple but effective. She accessed the embassy's security footage, isolating the exact moment Marcus had been killed. The attack had been swift, a blinding flash of plasma cutting through the air before the room descended into chaos. The Kravoth had left nothing to chance. But Emilia saw something they missed, a pattern in their escape, a subtle trace of their operatives that, when followed, could lead her directly to them. The search began, methodical, precise, and without mercy. She accessed contacts in her former network, quickly gathering what little intel she could on the Kravoth factions. They had moved quickly, vanishing into the underworld of Nereth Prime, but there was no corner in the galaxy too dark for her to find. There was always a crack, always someone who could be bought or broken. Information was a currency she could use to her advantage. Her first contact was an old informant, a smuggler with ties to the Kravoth black market. He had once been an ally, back when she had needed him to retrieve intel for a mission. Now, he was just another pawn to be manipulated. She met him in a crowded underground market, cloaked in a hood and shadows. His eyes darted nervously as he handed her the information she requested, the names and faces of Kravoth operatives who were involved in the attack. With this data in hand, Emilia's next step was clear. She'd already planned the operation in her mind, but now it was time to execute it. The first target was an isolated Kravoth lieutenant, a cowardly figure hiding within the depths of the city. He would know where the rest were, and Emilia would make sure he talked. The Kravoth were wrong if they thought they had left Earth's representatives vulnerable. Emilia's past had taught her how to make them pay for underestimating her, and this time the cost would be their lives. The widow they had discarded was about to make them regret that mistake. Emilia stood in the shadows, watching the fortified compound through the scope of her sniper rifle. The Kravoth stronghold was heavily guarded, its walls bristling with weapons and alien sentries that roamed the perimeter. She could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her, but there was no time for hesitation. She had spent years honing the skills necessary for this moment. Her instincts, honed through countless operations, were as sharp as ever. Her target was inside, Commander Varric, the architect of Marcus's assassination, and the one who had orchestrated the attack. The Kravoth were known for their brutal efficiency, but Emilia had always prided herself on being just one step ahead. She had come here to dismantle them, one piece at a time. She took a deep breath, steadying her hands as she adjusted the rifle settings. A quiet hum of technology resonated in her ear as she tapped into the compound's surveillance system. Her hacking skills, a relic of her past, allowed her to bypass security and feed false information to the sentries on patrol. For a few precious minutes, the compound would be blind to her presence. A few precise shots from her rifle took out the outer guards, silent, quick, and lethal. She moved with methodical precision, slipping inside the compound as the last sentry crumpled to the ground. Her heart beat steadily in her chest, but her mind was calm, focused only on the task at hand. As she navigated the labyrinthine corridors, her thoughts flashed back to the moment she had first met Marcus. The way he had stood by her, convinced that diplomacy could solve all conflicts, had drawn her in. She had left the chaos of war behind for him, traded her life of violence for a future built on hope. She had thought she could find peace in his arms, that they could build something together that didn't rely on the destruction she had known. But Marcus was gone, taken from her in the most brutal way possible, and now the world would learn that humanity wasn't just a beacon of peace, it was a force to be reckoned with. She moved through the compound like a shadow, using the darkness to her advantage. She didn't need to leave survivors in her wake. She wasn't here to negotiate. She was here for vengeance. And vengeance had a price. Her first confrontation came quickly. A Kravoth soldier appeared from behind a corner, weapon raised, but Emilia was faster. Her blade slipped from its sheath in one fluid motion, cutting across the alien's throat before he could even react. His body hit the floor with a muted thud, and she was already moving on, never pausing to reflect on the kill. She had a mission, and every second wasted was a second closer to failure. As she entered the command center, her heart rate spiked for a split second. Varric was there, flanked by 2 elite guards. The commander's reptilian eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, there was no question in his mind who she was. He recognized the threat, the deadly calm in her demeanor. But it was too late. He had underestimated her. She threw a smoke grenade, plunging the room into a thick cloud of darkness. The Kravoth guard scrambled, firing wildly, but Emilia was already gone, moving faster than they could track. The high-tech armor she wore, a blend of Earth's most advanced tech and her own enhancements, allowed her to slip through their attempts to pin her down. In the chaos, she took them out, one by one, in quick, brutal fashion. Varric made a desperate move, drawing his plasma blade and charging toward her. He was fast, deadly, and a skilled fighter in his own right. But Emilia had spent years training for this kind of battle. Their blades clashed, sparks flying as they met. The strength of the Kravoth commander was overwhelming, but Emilia was more agile, more ruthless. She parried his strikes and countered with precision. She could feel the tension building, the weight of her emotions threatening to break through the calm facade she had built. This wasn't just about completing a mission, it was personal now. With a final strike, she disarmed him, sending his plasma blade skidding across the floor. He attempted to scramble for another weapon, but Emilia was already on him. She moved in, and in a swift, calculated motion, she incapacitated him, rendering him useless. As he lay gasping on the floor, she crouched beside him, her face inches from his. "You thought you could destroy humanity," she whispered, her voice cold and unfeeling. "You only made us stronger." Emilia activated a tracking device, ensuring the information would get back to the Kravoth High Command. She was done playing by their rules. She had sent her message loud and clear: humanity would no longer be underestimated. The Kravoth had chosen to provoke the wrong species. And now, Emilia Thane would make them regret it. The mission was complete, but Emilia didn't feel relief. The death of Varric and the destruction of his forces were victories, yes, but they were not enough. Not for Marcus. Not for the thousands who had died because of the Kravoth's unchecked aggression. There would be no returning to a life of peace. That had been taken from her, and now she had to ensure the galaxy knew it. The final phase of her plan was simple, but its impact would resonate across every star system. She had set the Kravoth's bloodied trail on a course to reach their higher command, a warning that humanity was no longer a diplomatic afterthought, a fragile species easily discarded by the powerful. The Kravoth had thought themselves untouchable, but now they would understand just how wrong they were. She watched the transmission from a distance, her heart steady but cold as the surviving Kravoth operative transmitted her message. It was a simple one, a threat wrapped in finality. "This is what happens when you kill a diplomat," she had said. "This is what happens when you underestimate Earth. You made the mistake of thinking we're weak. You've just learned otherwise. There would be no negotiation. No chance for peace." She had destroyed their command structure, obliterated their plans. What followed would be retribution, but not just for Marcus. Humanity was now a force to be reckoned with, and she would ensure the galaxy knew it. The Kravoth had sowed chaos. Now, it was time to reap the whirlwind. Emilia's thoughts drifted back to Marcus. She could still see his smile, still hear his voice calling for unity, for peace among the stars. He had believed humanity could carve out a future of diplomacy, and perhaps, in another life, he would have been right. But his death had proven that some lessons had to be learned the hard way. Some battles had to be fought with blood, not words. As she stood in the shadows, her hand resting on the control pad that would send the final transmission to the Kravoth High Command, she allowed herself one last moment of reflection. Marcus would never see the world she had fought to build, the one he had always dreamed of. But she would carry his vision forward, not in the form of peace, but in the form of strength. She had to, for his memory, for humanity's future. Her eyes narrowed as she hit the final command. The message sent. The Kravoth would never forget the price of underestimating Earth. The silence in the room was deafening. Emilia allowed herself to breathe deeply, but it was not a sigh of relief. It was one of finality. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The era of peace through diplomacy had died with Marcus. The era of human strength had begun.